Hello, Baylor fans. This is Kevin Barrera, co-owner and recruiting analyst with BearsIllustrated.com. Here this evening with Elliot Coffey. Many of you Baylor fans will know Elliot from his playing days with Baylor, not a couple years ago. So, welcome, Elliot. Elliot is a contributor to BearsIllustrated.com. We're definitely happy to have him on board with us. How are you doing this evening, Elliot?
Good, man. It's good to be here. I appreciate you bringing me on board and let me say some thoughts about how I feel about this past week.
Definitely. I figured you'd probably be a better person to do this than me because you play football. I didn't. People would laugh at me if I was trying to break down the game.
No, it's good. It's good. You have a unique perspective, so you've been on the field with them too, so you know exactly the ins and outs of what we're doing on that game-to-game basis.
Definitely. So I guess we'll just dive right in. Obviously, as many Baylor fans know, Baylor came out of Austin with a win, 28-7. Probably wasn't the most clean and prettiest game that people have seen from Baylor this season or even the past couple of seasons. But nonetheless, we left Austin with a victory. It's on the road. All Big 12 games on the road are very tough. So just kind of give just your initial thoughts, after you've had a night to sleep on the game, what you thought from the Bears and just the game in general.
Right. Anytime you can go on the road and get a win, especially in conference play, is big. UT's having a tough season right now, but playing in that stadium, like I mentioned on my little write-up that I had earlier in the week, when you're playing in front of 100,000 people, there's tons of opportunities for things to go wrong, and the momentum shift is much heavier when you have 100,000 people cheering when you get a third down stop. So, preparation-wise, I think we were in really good position to go out there and beat up on them early. I think that early drop from Levi kind of killed some of the momentum, and it killed a little bit of the fluidity that we had in between, Bryce's timing. You see his footwork was a bit off after that drop. A couple other receivers, Antoine, I think, had 3 or 4 drops, and it just looked like the timing was completely off. So I think, first and foremost, that was the issue on the defensive side of the ball. I think they played phenomenal as well as, Baylor defense has in years. So getting down, once again, on the road when you have UT driving on you, they have an opportunity to go out there and kick a field goal. We block it, return it for a touchdown. Huge shift. Come back, we don't score, kick it. They drive on us again. You get another turnover in the red zone. So from the defensive standpoint, I think that swarm mentality, you look at, Bryce Hager was all over the field. Sean Oakman's sack was huge for us, kind of rattle swoops back there, because when you have a younger quarterback, he's going to feel the need to go out there and win the game himself. And I think that's kind of what he was trying to do towards the end, and I think that's why we had a lot of success. The 3 and outs were phenomenal for us. So you have all those factors on the defensive side, and then, when Bryce did get comfortable, sat back and was able to get a couple touchdowns. Corey Coleman's touchdown to seal the game at the end was incredible, right on top of that corner. So it was great. I think all around, looking at the game, it was a great win for us, a great win for that team, because that's the first road challenge we've really had. Buffalo and Iowa State aren't contenders on a national level or even on a conference level. So to go into Texas, go into Austin, where we historically haven't won, it was huge for us to go out there and get that win.
Most definitely, yeah. We'll kind of dive into offense and defense here, but I think you made a good point about having a lot of people in the stands. That can definitely make a difference. It kind of look, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I wonder how much the shade may have played a factor in wide receivers locating the ball, because as you said, we had a lot of drops, which is kind of uncharacteristic for this team. You don't see a lot of drops from, especially, I guess Antoine Goodley, last year had a little bit of issue with catching the ball, but some of the other wide receivers, you haven't really seen that before, and so that was definitely uncharacteristic. And like you said, Bryce Petty, it seemed he definitely settled down as the game progressed, but like you said early in the game, it seemed that Baylor just didn't have that rhythm. So I guess we can kind of dive into the offense. I know you're a defensive guy, so you're probably definitely ready to talked some good things about the defense. But I guess starting with Bryce Petty, obviously with the quarterback, that's where it starts and ends. But how would you kind of rate his play and just kind of how he progressed through the game?
Hmm. Yeah, so Bryce had, um, I wouldn't say one of his worst games, but timing wise, it was just very difficult for him um, to get any kind of flow going all through the game. It kind of seemed like he wasn't necessarily on the same wavelength with his receivers. Um, I think the first issue I saw was him missing Antoine on a 12-yard comeback. It was on our sideline, back to the sun, and I think that may have been more, like you said, the factor of the shade that we had. Um, it just looked like it was very difficult for him and the receivers to get, I guess, in the same mindset, and that essentially is what you're looking for those guys to go out there and somebody comes out of break and boom, the ball's there. That's what we
Right.
do. You throw the ball deep, that timing is on point every time. You look at Jay Lee, Katie, it doesn't matter who's throwing out there, Antoine, he's catching those guys in stride 9 times out of 10, and we just didn't see that on Saturday. So, um, I'm not big on grades per se, but I definitely think hitting on those points, if you can just get the early passes down, um, you have that comeback route. Levi catches that ball early on. I think Bryce doesn't feel that same um, issue that I was saying with Swoops is trying to go out there and make a spectacular play. Because
Right.
honestly, in his position, all I need to do is manage the game and deliver the ball. There's nothing that's going to need to be really spectacular because those guys that he has running those routes for him are really top-notch receivers. So if he can just deliver the ball, get it to them, they'll do the rest.
Yeah.
So I think if he just settles down, he takes some of the. I'm sure he had a ton of weight on his shoulders heading into the week because we're ranked higher than we've ever been ranked. You're playing in Austin, which, like I said, it's not a top tier UT team, but it's still UT in Austin.
Hmm.
So I'm sure he felt the pressure of that carrying over to this week. I just hope that he has Bryles, Kaz, the rest of the guys around him that are just calming him down because that's what it's going to take to go out there and win more games like this.
Right. No, Petty did come in the during the post game, and he talked about how Texas was showing him a lot of different looks, and he was probably a little bit confused by it. He said it was something he has never seen before. What did you see kind of from the defensive side of the ball from Texas that maybe they were doing a little bit different to maybe throw off some of the rhythm with Bryce early? Were they blitzing more? What did you see from the defense from Texas that may have aided in them being off rhythm?
Right. First and foremost, I think Texas has an incredible defensive line.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think disrupting the pocket was huge for him. Establishing the run is everything that sets up. We have, a somewhat of a play action presence, but a lot of what we do is drop back passing. So establishing the run early leaves that threat to where you don't credit. I mean, you look at it, they blitzed a ton, especially right through the A gap. The sack that we saw there, it was late in the third or early in the fourth quarter, where the linebacker came through scot free. You have to adjust across that line, and I think that was one of the biggest deals for him. UT's corners also were really on point all day in terms of sticking to receivers, breaking, great communication across the entire secondary. They have a very solid defense. If they scored more points, that would be a solid team. I don't know what happened when they played against BYU that allowed them to run all of them the way they did, but they really play well against us, and I think that's kudos to their defense and not necessarily a knock on Bryce. I think it was a couple new looks. You saw some zone blitzes. There was a bit of man blitzing towards the end, and that's where I think we saw the separation when we started getting the longer passes. When he sees the one-on-ones, the opportunity is there to just chunk it downfield because our guy's going to outrun whoever they have. But for 3.5 quarters, they really did play well on the defensive side of the ball. So I think that's it's them as opposed to Bryce not playing well. And if you look at from Bryce's standpoint, he didn't turn the ball over. So his decision making, I think, was more so based off of doing what's best, even though there's not a viable option that's going to get us points right now. And he didn't turn the ball over because at the end of the day, that's what won us the game was us winning the turnover battle.
Yep, definitely. And I guess with the running game, some people have been kind of have kind of questioned our offensive line, namely talking about the running game. I know in the previous three games, 3 or 4 games, we've had a lot of rushing yards, but it just kind of seems that, our running game just hasn't been as potent as what it has been in the past.
Mhm.
Like you said, they used the running game to set up the pass. Um, how do you assess the running game in this game? Obviously, Shock had a great game, had around 150 yards. Believe he scored. Not sure. I think he scored. So a great game for him. How would you assess the offensive line in this game and just the running game overall?
I think the offensive line, all things considered, did well. Um, the worst part about it to me was on the goal line, we can't score 3 attempts from the 1 yard line.
Right.
And that to me shows an issue with leverage and for those guys to not be able to get under the defensive line and at least get that push for 1 yard to get us in. So I think they're still growing. They are a relatively young line. I mean, you have Drango and you have Troy on the outside, and those guys are older, seasoned guys. The interior, much younger, newer guys going out there. So I think we'll be fine. There was some miscommunication when the blitzes came in, and that's, going back to UT. They had some great play calling out there. As long as those guys communicate across the board, then I think we'll be fine. But you saw late in the fourth and even in the third, we were running all over them. And I think it just took a little bit of time for them to get used to those different looks. And this is just another thing. They'll go back in there. I'm sure they watched all the film today. They'll go back, they'll watch some more film tomorrow, and then they'll have practice ready for it because you better believe that TCU is going to watch that film too, see what they did wrong, and try to exploit that the same way. So as long as they're in the film room this week, I have no doubt that they're going to have an issue. Coach Clem and those guys will take care of them.
Most definitely. But yeah, I think overall, it took them a little bit of time, and there was probably some different things that went on throughout the game that may have aided in them not being on track rhythmically.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you get Antoine back last week. Corey Coleman comes back last week, but these guys haven't played together.
Right.
This was their first full game with the wide receiving core being full. All healthy. So, I agree with you. I think they'll get some things fixed, and we'll see an entirely different team. And this team plays 100% different at home. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think definitely, like you said, they'll get some of those things fixed in practice this week, and we'll see a different team on Saturday. But transitioning over to the defense, this is your bread and butter. Just initial thoughts from the defense. You said earlier that you thought they played great. They played outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
It has. You don't really talk too much about a Baylor defensive line being able to shut down the team and just kind of allowing the whole defense to kind of do their thing. But that's kind of what we've seen this year so far from Andrew Billings in the middle, Bo Blackshear, Sean Oakman, the rest of those guys. So just kind of talk a little bit about them. Just initial observation at first, and then we'll kind of dive into the specific areas on the defense.
Right. So from the D line, their swarming mentality was incredible on Saturday. It didn't matter if they were running between the tackles, if they were running off tackle, if they were throwing left and right. Those guys were flat out flying the entire game, and they held the line incredibly well. We're not going to move too far into the linebackers yet, but in terms of filling their gap, Billings in the middle playing two gaps if he has to. Javonte McGee came in and played outstanding as well. Palmer, like I said, flying around, and then Oakman is just a force to be reckoned with. So it was really great to see those guys all come together. That's the kind of cohesion that we're looking at and that we want on the offensive side of the ball right now across the line that you're seeing from the defense, and the numbers are showing. You get down to the 1 yard line twice, and we make stops. So that's a true testament to how well those guys are playing, how hard they're fighting right now, and just them buying into the system and completely listening to Coach Acuff and Bennett and getting it out there.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's been huge for us this year is being able to control the line of scrimmage, and it's definitely helped, with our defense. Because personally, I think it's a good thing when we're not talking about DBs and safeties a lot. That to me that means your defensive line is performing well, and those guys are able to do their job and not maybe get a little bit exposed because I know our DBs are young. But just kind of going to the linebackers, Bryce Hager was big this week. He kind of got kind of towards the end of the Iowa State game. I think he missed a couple of plays where Richardson broke a couple of big runs towards the end. But I think this weekend he would play big again, and that kid has been huge for the Baylor defense.
Yeah, so Bryce was lights out. He flew all over. He made the plays he needed to play and then some. So that's all you can ask. I mean, up front, that D line was locking everything down. I feel giving him very direct and clear reads, and he hit it. That's the thing about playing linebackers. You can't think twice about a read. If it opens up, hit it. And he did it every time it was presented in front of him. In coverage, I thought he was great in terms of not letting number 3 receiver off the line, tracking, because they did a ton of misdirection, and a lot of that misdirection with them was trying to bring somebody backside and layer receivers. And I think he did a great job of not only getting in Swoop's face with the play action when he was out on a naked bootleg, but he also did a great job if the play action was away from him of getting to the second level and covering that deep receiver that's coming on the backside. So he did really well there. Avion Edwards played well early. He split time with number 11. I can't remember that guy's name. But he came out there and had a really good defense pass in the third quarter, and I think he just has a hard nose and played great.
Yeah, I love Avion. He's just one of those kids that's just smart. He's not real big, but he plays smart, plays fast. The other kid you were talking about or thinking about is Taylor Young.
There you go.
He's I think redshirt freshman linebacker. That kid's just he's not your prototypical size linebacker, but what's that?
He said he's little, but he's a stud.
He is. Yeah, he's definitely a stud. To me, he's kind of like a Joe Pavelec kind of guy. Not the most athletic kid on the field, but he's smart, heady, and he's always going to be around the ball, and he's always going to make plays on the ball. I think there was definitely one play in the third quarter. It may have been a third down or something like that, but he had a deflection, on a guy that just was running a slant route, and he put his hand up there and deflected the ball. It was a big play for us. So. So yeah, I think the linebackers were great in this game. Orion Stewart, we can kind of dive into the DBs here. Orion Stewart had 2 interceptions. They challenged Xavier Howard, and I think he answered the bell. He had a couple of phantom pass interference calls on him.
Yeah, not to cut you off, but I mean that was my biggest frustration. It was defensed very well from what I saw. Granted, they put us in the corner and the sun was in my eyes, but from what I saw, especially since they didn't show us any replays on the board, they seem to be defensed really well. Yeah. And especially the one late in the fourth that got him past midfield. The ball was overthrown. Neither of them was making an effort to get to it. So to make that call just leads me to think that they were really worried about having a shutout in Austin for the first time since I think it was 76. Right. And they were willing to make a couple phantom calls to get him out. Yeah. Play in the end zone, once again, I couldn't really see it. So we'll just go ahead and assume that it was a fair call. But all in all, when you're competing both sides, you're going to have some tugging and pulling. You got to let those guys play, especially in the Big 12.
Yeah.
As many deep routes as we have. I thought T. Burt played really well. His range is incredible in terms of getting down to the box if he needs to. With all the misdirection that we saw, Colin Brent's played phenomenal out there too. Mm-hmm. It was just a good day all around for the defense. I think Coach Bennett knew exactly what they were going to run, and they executed to a T. And the play calling from Texas I thought was great with leverage, trying to out-leverage us to one side. With the naked bootlegs were what was hurting us.
Yeah.
We were always in the right place. They, I feel, don't have players right now out there that can fully do what Strong and those guys are looking for.
Yep.
But I think we played well. And I think any time that you put yourself in position to make plays the way we did and then make as many of them as we did, we'll be successful as long as we have that level of focus.
Oh, most definitely. To kind of talk about, obviously you have experience with Coach Bennett and the way that they prepare their guys, but one good point you said is the defense knew what they were going to run. And quite frankly, I mean, you can watch every game that Baylor plays, and the defense generally seems to be in the spot that they need to be. So talk just a little bit about Coach Bennett and their staff and how they prepare those guys. Um, Obviously, they're tireless workers, but what are things that they're looking for to kind of prepare the defense, when they're facing any type of offense, especially in the Big 12.
Right. Well, lucky for us and unlucky for us, most people run spread offenses. So you're seeing a lot of zones, zone reads, off tackle. You get the power. As far as the run game go, and then you get a couple draws. That's kind of all you're going to see. So we know that the biggest thing for us is when a play breaks down or with play action in bootlegs, because once you overcommit to a play because you think you know what it is, that's when they slip that tight end behind you. That's when they slip that number 2 receiver behind you. So it's staying squared. It's from the D-line standpoint, feet replacing feet, and then reacting to what's going on in front of you. So Coach Bennett does, from my experience, the best job of knowing based off of formations what people are going to run. And then he hammers it home every day at practice. And then he hammers it in during meetings. And then he hammers it in before the game, hammers it in after the game, let you know what you did right, what you did wrong.
Yeah.
And if you pay close enough attention to him during the game, he'll call out every play based off of formation. He knows
Oh,
every play
wow.
before it happens. I've never heard him get a play wrong. So he's on the
Wow.
sideline yelling, and he knows exactly what they're running based off of where the tight end was, if they shift formation, based off of where the running back is in relationship to the quarterback. I mean, it's incredible what he does. So if you listen to
Wow.
this guy, then you're going to know what to do. And then at the end of the day, it's all about execution. Go out there and do what your coach should do. Don't second guess yourself.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. So obviously, Baylor takes home a win, 5-0 on the season,
Mm-hmm.
now 2-0 in the Big 12. The rankings came out today. Baylor, number 3 in the country in the coaches poll, number 5 in the country in the AP poll. I'm not sure what. I think TCU is number 11 in the coaches poll. I think they're number 9 in the AP poll. So we're definitely looking at a top 10 matchup this weekend
Mm-hmm.
at McLean Stadium. Just quickly, and we'll dive into TCU later this week, but just quickly, off your head, the previous times that you've played TCU, what's something that either concerns you or something that you think they're gonna key on this week to hopefully or to definitely get a win on Saturday.
Right. Trevon Boykin, I think, is the X factor. He's really grown as a quarterback. You see the guy going through progressions as opposed to going out there scrambling and chunking the ball up free. So I think it's great for him to have been in that system for as long as he has, because he has that understanding now where he can sit back, read the defense, and then deliver based off of what's out there, not just a pre-snap read, not just what the play is structured to do. So that's the best for him. I think they run a lot of play action because, like I said, that's where we had the biggest issues on Saturday, was with play action, with the naked bootleg, with the receivers coming weak side, slipping somebody off. So I think that's what they're going to run. D-line is stout right now. Backers are flying around. I don't see that really being an issue. Better believe that the corners are going to be challenged one-on-one. From the defensive side of the ball, I think you put a ton of pressure on Bryce if you can. So I would be ready for that. Get, Shock and the rest, and Devin and the rest of those guys, Johnny, cued in on pass pro. Make sure that they know, based off of these fronts, all right, this linebacker's scooting in this way, that they know how to adjust to make sure that they take care of Bryce. Because as long as he doesn't get hit during the day, then he's going to stay on point and he'll deliver the ball, and we'll score a ton of points, especially at home.
Good deal. Well, that's something that you our subscribers can look forward to. We'll try to do this, every week. We'll do a recap of the previous game, and then leading up to the next game for Baylor, we'll definitely do a preview. And these will kind of coincide with Tim Watson, our publisher and co-owner's preview and post-game articles. So, like I said, this is something new that we're gonna do. Appreciate Elliot's time this evening, and you guys can look forward to this the preview on Thursday. So Appreciate your time, Elliot. Have a
Absolutely appreciate you, man.
yeah, man. Have a good evening, and we'll talk to you guys later.